Hey there, BoQ crew. This is Jennifer, and today I'm going to take a few moments in this video and I'm going to show off one of the whimsy stamps that we have in stock at BoQ Creations, and I'm going to show you how easy it is to color it with the OLO markers that we also have in stock at BoQ Creations, and how easy it is to take these colored stamps and use them on your favorite Christmas tags for your presents this season. So in this video, I'm actually going to show off this whimsy stamp set. This is called the Dragon Holiday Peekers. And what makes them peekers is that they all look like they're peeking over a ledge, around a corner, or they're popping up out of something. And one of the fun things about whimsy is that whimsy has some kind of fun or snarky sayings like the naughty list, Dear Santa, I've been goodish, got presents, no peeking. So I'm actually going to take one of these stamps and I'm going to show you how to color it with my OLO markers. And then I'm going to show you a tag that I created that will be the backdrop for one of these stamps. So let me go ahead and put this one aside. And I'm going to grab one of these stamps, these pieces that I already stamped, and I die cut using the coordinated die cuts. And so I'm going to go ahead and put that right down there on my mat, and I'm going to grab my OLO markers and get started. So this dragon is actually very simple to color, and we're only really going to need a couple of colors. I'm going to use some greens for the dragon's face, and I'm going to use some browns for those antlers that the dragon is wearing. So one of the good color combinations that I really like is going to be this YG 1.6 and the YG 1.4. These are nice, bright, kind of deep yellow greens. And I'm going to use them to color my dragon's face and his hands and his little horns that are coming off the side of his head. So to do this, I'm actually going to start with my YG 1.6. And I'm going to create some shadows. And so I'm going to start with these horns. And I'm going to create these shadows by making these very light flicking motions with my markers. And in this case, I'm going to go from the bottom to the top just because of how these little lines are already on here. Now, when I close my OLOs, if I know that I'm going to be going back and forth between coupled my colors, I actually don't keep the lids attached fully. I just kind of keep them on there until I go back to use them. So now I'm going to pick up my 1.4 and I'm going to go over that 1.6 in that same flicking motion. And then I'm going to color the rest of that white spot. So again, same thing on the other side. I'm going to go over it in that light flicking motion. And then I will color in the rest of the white. If I notice that I'm not getting a good blend between the two colors, sometimes what I'll do is I'll just kind of go over that point where the two colors blend. I'll kind of use a little bit of a circular motion to get that blending kind of activated there. Since I still have my YG 1.4 in my hand, I'm going to go ahead and color across his forehead with that YG 1.4. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start working on his face. And so I'm going to go back to my YG 1.6 and I'm going to create a little bit of an outline around his face. And I'm going to do the same thing for these little side snouts. And then I'm going to come back in with my YG 1.4. And sometimes when I'm trying to blend out, I like to use a very small, light, circular motion along that line. And then I can color out from that darker line. I'm going to go across his forehead and in between his eyes with this YG 1.4. And I'm going to do the same thing with his little snout here. I'm going to use a little bit of a circular, light-handed circular motion along that edge of that YG 1.6, just so that I can get a nice, good blend. And then I'm going to finish coloring in that YG 1.4. Now I'm going to go back to my YG 1.6 and I'm going to use a flicking motion from the sides. This is going to create some shadow and give it some depth. So I'm going to do the same thing on both sides. Going to use some flicking motions. And I'm going to pick up my YG 1.4 and I'm going to do the same thing. Create those flicking motions over top of that YG 1.6. If I need to get some more blend, I'm going to go back over that YG 1.6 with the YG 1.4 just so I can get a good blend. And since I actually want to make this middle lighter, I'm going to use my YG 1.2 and I'm going to use those flicking motions over the YG 1.4 until I get it good and blended that I'm happy with. Sometimes I need to go back and forth between the two colors just so that I get a blend that I'm very happy with. And so in this case, I'm going to do that same thing. Just going to go back and forth until I get a blend that I feel comfortable with. In this case, I think that blend looks pretty good. So I'm going to cap up this YG 1.2 because I'm not going to need it again. I'm going to go back to my YG 1.6 and I'm going to work on these little fingers here. And I'm just going to create some shadow in between the little finger pads there with that YG 1.6. And then I'm going to use the YG 1.4 to blend it out. Again, using those small circular motions so I get a good blend along the edge of the two colors. And then I have this little guy's fingers are colored. And so I'm actually done with all the green coloring on this little creature. Look how great he looks. You got some darker edges along the side and it starts to create a little bit of depth on this flat character. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I could keep the eyes white, but I don't like to do that. So I'm going to use this BG 7.0. This BG 7.0 is a very, very, very light color. You can tell because it's a 7.0, it's very desaturated. And just because these eyes are so light colored, I'm actually going to use my OLO 0 and I'm just going to blend out the edges of that BG 7.0 just so I don't get any harsh lines in the middle of my eyes. Okay, for my final touches, I'm going to work on those antlers, and for this I'm going to use O 7.7 and YO 2.7. And I'm just going to keep the coloring very simple on this. I'm going to take my O 7.7 and I'm going to go around the edge of each of the antlers. And then I'm going to get my YO 2.7. And even though these aren't technically in the same color family, what I like about these is that on a visual chart, they're right next to each other. And so visually, when you put OLO markers together, even if they're in a different color family, if they are very close in color, they do tend to blend very easily. So this O 7.7 and this YO 2.7, even though they're very different numerically, they are very close visually. So if you notice, when I start coloring over that O 7.7, notice how easily it melds into that YO 2.7. So as I finish coloring up here, I'm just going to kind of do some extra little flicks from the edge to get some really good shadows and blending on those antlers. And then this little guy is actually done. And so this is what he looks like. One of the things that I like to do with these colored images is I actually like to give them some extra little highlights with a white gel pen. And so I'm actually going to use this Jelly Roll pen that I have in my stash. BoQ does sell a white gel pen that is great for this technique. And I'm just going to create some little lines, some kind of like highlight lines along these edges here. And I'm not going to be too particular about where that I'm putting them. Really anywhere is fine. Usually they go along the edges, just to kind of create some additional depth and make them look fun. And I'm going to give him some little whites in his eyes. And now this little dragon creature is finished. And so what I'm going to do with this little guy is I'm going to take this tag that I've already made and I'm going to add him to the tag. Notice how in this tag, it's like there's a brick wall with all the presents, and now it's like he's peeking over that brick wall. And I went ahead and I already made a sentiment. I stamped a sentiment using one of these little thought bubbles that I have in my stash. And this little sentiment says, "No peeking, Merry Christmas." And so since I know that I'm going to pop up this dragon as well as the sentiment, what I'm going to first do is I'm going to glue on the sentiment to the dragon. So I'm just going to put a little glue on the back of this "No peeking" sentiment. And I'm going to place that where I want it to be. Then I'm going to flip this over and I'm going to grab these little foam dots. And I love these foam dots. BoQ sells these. Notice they're a hexagon shape. And for some reason, this hexagon shape just seems to make it fit anywhere, which I love. And if it's a little bit too big, I can just kind of slice them in half and I have the perfect size. So I'm just going to use a couple of these little foam dots and I'm going to pop up this little dragon. And so like I was saying, if it doesn't quite fit, I can pop it, I can cut one of these in half. And so I'm looking for a pair of scissors actually. I don't seem to see a pair of scissors right now. So I'm not going to worry about that since I don't see my scissors, but I got those little foam dots. I could cut them in half and I could actually put them where the little fingers are. Another great thing about these little foam dots as opposed to other foam dots is that because they have the pointed edges, it makes it very easy to peel off the backing. So once I have that backing peeled off, I can go ahead and turn it over and I can place this little guy right here onto my tag. And now I've used this adorable colored stamp image as a centerpiece for this wonderful tag that I'm going to put on a present for Christmas. So if you like this stamp set, BoQ still does have some of these stamp sets in stock. You can go right to our website and you can order one and you can pick it up in store, or we can send it to you along with some other goodies that are also on our website. So that's it for now. Thank you for joining me and hope you get your crafting on.